The Spirit Stones, also known as Soul Stones, are polished gems that are worn by various members of the Aeldari species, more specifically the Eldari of the Craft Worlds and Eldari Corsairs. These gems act as soul traps, so when an Eldari dies, their soul enters the Spirit Stone as opposed to entering the warp. To a human soul, entering the warp holds little value, for virtually no human soul can retain its consciousness after death. However, Eldari do remain conscious after death, and their soul can witness every single horror born of the warp: demons, warp predators, and their great enemy, the Chaos God Slaanesh, doom of the Eldari, who seeks to consume the souls of their race, for it was the Eldari who birthed the Chaos God of excess and pleasure. Spirit Stones themselves are constructed from harvested psychically conductive crystal known as Waystones. But what exactly is this crystalline substance? We know that currently the source for new Spirit Stones is in fact the ancient Eldari homeworlds, now known as the Crone Worlds, named after the Eldari goddess Morai-Heg, the Crone. These worlds, which have been drawn into the Eye of Terror, have had their geology seemingly altered to become comprised almost entirely of this crystal used in the construction of Spirit Stones. This would seemingly suggest that Spirit Stones are made from crystallized psychic energy of some kind. This initially would make sense, as the warp itself is a churning sea of untamed psychic energy, and any worlds that have been trapped within the warp for over 10,000 years would be bound to have some kind of geological change from the warping effects of the immaterium itself, regardless of the bizarre behaviour of time within it. Being made of crystallized psychic energy could also seemingly explain as to why a soul is drawn into the crystal upon death. For souls and psychic energy are inherently linked. After all, the souls of Psykers do indeed burn brighter within the warp, and the Eldari are a naturally psychic species. But there is another distinct possibility: that Spirit Stones are, for lack of a better term, the crystallized remains of long-dead Eldari. The novel Jain-Zar: Storm of Silence details events that take place relatively soon after the events of the fall of the Eldari upon some of the Eldari homeworlds that had yet to be drawn into the Eye of Terror. Upon the world of Adatheron, Jain-Zar and a Surman find dozens upon dozens of egg-shaped Waystones, each found in the place when an Eldari had died and had been consumed by Slaanesh upon her birth. Each of these Waystones, when touched by a living being, reacted by emitting soft pulses of light. The possibility of these Waystones being made from the remains of dead Eldari is also referenced when Jain-Zar and a Surman dock their ship at the outpost near Irvevanamin, which was home to an Eldari cult known as the Harmonious. Their leader, Davainesh, describes these stones, which the cult called Harmony Stones, with the following quote:
"The bounty bestowed to us in the midst of the cleansing. We each have one, and through them we are linked, our fates entwined, our goals shared, our doom averted."
This would seem to suggest that, if Davainesh is correct, the fall of the Eldari resulted in the creation of the Waystones from those Eldari who died instantly when Slaanesh was born. This claim is later supported by Maugan-Ra, the Harvester of Souls.
"I do not know if they have a purpose. They are a side effect. The inevitable consequence of she who thirsts, devouring countless billions of our people. Waste product, you might say.
Now, while initially these egg-shaped gems could simply be the spirit stones that were worn by the Aeldari before their deaths, with Asurman and Jainzar collecting them with the hope that any spirit inside them might be freed, there are a few things that need to be considered. Firstly, before the fall, the Aeldari themselves had no reason to wear spirit stones, for when they died, their souls peacefully dissolved into the warp before being reborn into a new physical body. And secondly, these stones collected by Jainzar and Asurman do not appear to contain any souls, for one major reason. The demons that prowled the surface of the world actively shunned these gems. Spirit stones that contain a soul within them, if encountered by a demon, are actively consumed. This is shown later in the novel, where a demonic incursion breaks out upon the corsair vessel the Swift River, resulting in demonettes of Slaanesh hungrily attempting to devour the spirit stones worn by the corsairs. Demons in the act of consuming spirit stones is referenced multiple times in many other instances, such as during the short story of Kelmon, when Farseer Kelmon receives a vision of his craft world battling the forces of chaos in the future, and witnesses a Keeper of Secrets, a greater demon of Slaanesh, consuming a soul stone. If these gems were indeed spirit stones that contain the souls of dead Aeldari, then it would make no sense as to why demonic entities would actively shun them. However, Aeldari leaving behind crystals upon their death makes a lot more sense when you take into account the species' biology. Aeldari biology indeed has a lot of links to crystalline substances. For example, when Aeldari excrete, they expunge, in place of traditional fecal matter, odorless crystalline structures. Considering when living organisms die they void their bowels, it could be something as simple as these waste stones being, essentially, the fecal matter from the Aeldari who died suddenly during the fall. However, there is a more important and noteworthy link with Aeldari biology and crystal. This link comes from the Farseers, those Aeldari who become lost upon the path of the seer and become the most powerful psykers of their race. When Farseers reach old age, their bodies begin to crystallize entirely, starting with their skeletal structure before moving on to their musculature and then other soft tissues. The Farseer Eldrad Ulthran, who is well over 10,000 years old, is beginning to undergo this transformation, and like the rest of his kind who become lost upon the path of the seer, will eventually retreat to an area of his craft world known as the Dome of Crystal Seers. Here, his crystalline body will take root and release his soul into the craft world's infinity circuit. In addition to this, whenever an Aeldari dies, their spirit stone will take root within the craft world and eventually grow into a wraithbone tree, while releasing the soul into the infinity circuit. If the spirit stones are made from the corpses of long dead Aeldari, this could also explain as to why the Crone worlds were comprised entirely of these crystals. For the corpses of the Aeldari essentially rot and decay, leaving crystalline structures behind in the place of soil. So why didn't the Aeldari on Adaferon leave crystalline bodies and simply left small egg-like gems? Within geology, crystalline structures tend to grow more elaborate if the process is slow, and these Aeldari on Adaferon died instantaneously, meaning that any crystalline byproduct would be small in size as a result of their rapid death. This would also explain why these Aeldari left only small crystalline structures, while someone like Eldrad Ulthran will leave an entirely crystal body upon their death if they expire from old age. A process that has undertaken 10,000 years compared to potentially only a couple of hundred years. Each process would leave a vastly different type of crystalline structure behind as a result. What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.